In this video, you're going to learn how to effortlessly guide the player with your level design. The challenge always comes from designing your game environments in such a way that effortlessly guide the player to their next destination without getting them lost or frustrated. And while playing Alan Wake, I rarely felt lost. Maybe a few times during combat, but I was always able to reorient myself back on path. So how do you use level design and some of the techniques that Remedy used in Alan Wake to guide the player through the nighttime forest environments? And in this video, I will show you how. So I'm going to use Alan Wake as an example to show you the techniques. However, many of these techniques can be used in your own game in third-person or first-person games. So let's get into it. So if you enjoyed the content that I've been putting out over the last decade, including this video, please consider supporting WoLD level design by visiting and downloading any of the premium tutorials that I've been putting out, as well as you can also make a donation to help me continue making these tutorials. Now, as an important side note, this tutorial is based on my own experience, opinions, and conclusions I reached while I was playing the game. Nothing here reflects what the developer or the publisher might have intended or did not intend as they were creating the game. These are just my conclusions that I reached while playing the game. So, what are the ways you can guide the player? And Alan Wake uses a combination of the following: landmarks, artificial objects, framing and composition, lighting, sound, character dialogue, and the self-talk dialogue that happens in Alan Wake's head. Following around NPCs, and using focus or framing that's part of the gameplay mechanic in Alan Wake. So let's break each of these down and go more in detail. Most important level design guidance is done through use of environment landmarks. Landmark is a dominating element that help to orient the player within your environment and guide the player to their final destination. It usually appears off in the distance and shown within the first few minutes of the level. In Alan Wake, landmarks are constantly used to reinforce the direction you should be going. I covered many landmarks examples in the storytelling level design secrets Alan Wake used. This is where many of the levels show you the landmark at the beginning of the map and you end up arriving at that location. These include the lighthouse, the gas station, train bridge, Anderson's farm, Bright Falls Power and Light, and the dam. And many of these locations you see them in the beginning of the map of the level, as well as throughout your traveling through the entire map as a constant reminder and guidance of where you need to go. So use landmarks to help orient and guide the player to their final destination or to their next destination. Next is artificial objects. Artificial objects are man-made objects that can be used to focus the player's attention towards a specific direction. In Alan Wake, these include roads, footpaths, fences, cabins, vehicles, lookout towers, and red medicine boxes. Roads and footpaths naturally guide the player along the environment, and in Alan Wake this is constantly used to keep you on track and keep you on the path. Fences guide you along the path as well and direct the player's movement. Cabins are also often used. These are shelters that you naturally seek to hide from the darkness of the forest. Vehicles are often used, especially if they have headlights on, or a vehicle is just placed in the middle of nature environment. It is an artificial object that kind of direct your attention and calls for you to go towards that prop, towards that vehicle. Lookout towers, and as humans we naturally tend to seek higher ground, especially in nature environment in the forest, to see where you need to go. Red medicine boxes, these often call for attention in order to reach them to get some health and to seek refuge from the forest environment. The key to using these artificial objects is through placement and position. You place them in areas where they command players' attention because they stand out from everything else nearby. And since Alan Wake takes place mostly outdoors, these artificial man-made objects capture the player's attention and guide them to their next destination. Next is framing and composition. Framing and composition is an artistic arrangement of natural or artificial objects, and this is used in Alan Wake to position the player's view on what's important, where they need to go, and what they need to do. The game is a great example how effective framing and composition can be used to guide the player. As you travel through the dark forest, it becomes difficult to see where you should be going. And with framing of environmental elements around you, you can guide the player from one area of the environment to the next and so on, one by one. And in Alan Wake, these include fallen trees, rock formations, road paths, fences, and props. Fallen trees and rock formations frame the next destination to aim for. They stand out from the rest of the forest, and you are naturally drawn to walk there. Another thing, as I mentioned before, road paths and fences do the same thing as fallen trees and rock formations. They naturally frame the direction of where the player needs to be going. Placing props in a specific way that naturally guide the player to go straight, to the right or to the left, such as placing cars that naturally point towards the direction that the player should be going. Or another example of vehicles that you're about to drive point the direction you need to start going. So as soon as you get into the car, that's where you need to go, straight ahead. Whenever you press a button to activate something, open the gate, activate the bridge, etc., your view is always facing the direction what that button will trigger. So you see the cause and effect, pressing a button and something happens in the same view. And if you are not facing the direction of what that button will activate, then the camera control is taken away from you and you see a fly-through of showing you what you just did and what that button activated. Anytime you walk out from the doorway into a new area, your perspective is framed towards the destination where you need to go. So, guide the player using composition and framing, so they travel from one location to another effortlessly. Guide their view to where they need to go. Use natural elements of your environment as well as artificial objects. Then we have lighting. We can't talk about guiding the player without covering lighting. Guide with light is an extremely useful level design technique, and as humans we don't like being in the dark. This is instinctual, so we always seek light. Lighting is one of the important gameplay mechanics in Alan Wake. It's also one of the primary ways the game guides you through the level. Anytime you're lost, look for the light and head to it. It's simple as that. Lighting can be used in many different ways to guide the player, such as lamps and light posts, structure lights from cabins, buildings, cars, distant lights like the one seen in the town level as you head for the helicopter landing pad, the searchlights, or the gas station lights, and the radio station light. Emergency boxes are always visible from afar. Flickering lights like the ones in the room where you pick up the helicopter key in the town hall. Green and red button lights. These are trigger lights you have to activate for power generators, movable platforms, or radios. Red and green lights are always visible and call your attention to activate them. Item pickups, and even manuscript pages. So use lighting to guide the player to their next destination. Extremely powerful and constantly used technique in level design. Another way to guide the player is through the use of sound, and this can include sound effects, as well as character dialogue.
Actually, I'm sorry about this. Would you mind grabbing the registration form from the desk? It's just across from Bucktooth Charlie.
And inner self-talk. And the inner self-talk of Alan Wake constantly guides you by saying what you should be doing and where you should be going.
I needed to get the power running in the cabin. There had to be a fuse box or a generator somewhere on the island. I'd have to get the car from the locked garage. I wasn't sure if I could face the world without my sunglasses and something for my headache.
Characters in the game tell the player what to do next.
It's dark in there. We need lights.
We can't reach the gate's control box from here. We need to get to the other side over the rooftop.
It's in the well-lit room.
Excuse me?
The use of sound effects. So use sound to guide the player forward through the use of props, environment sounds, NPC characters, and the inner dialogue of the playable character. Following NPCs. Following non-playable characters is another great way to guide the player. This is done few times in Alan Wake, such as when you meet up with Ben Mott and walk with him through the woods, walking with Cynthia Weaver, or following Sarah and Barry. If you decide to go your own way, NPCs will follow you until you get back on track to the level's objective, and then they are always just a step ahead of you, so you can never lose them. So introducing NPCs and making the player follow them is a great way to guide the player and create a connection with those characters and the game world. And then you have focus. At certain parts of the level, you are instructed to press F key to focus on an important element that the level designer wants you to see. It moves the camera away from the player and focuses on something important. As a level designer, you'll be able to script this with a trigger volume, for example. When the player steps into this volume, it calls for a text on screen, press F to focus, or something similar. Then the camera view is positioned exactly on what you would want the player to see. When the player leaves this volume, or the event is over, the little cinematic that you scripted, the text would disappear and you return to controlling the player. The key to use this is make the camera movement flow from the player to the position of focus without making an abrupt cut to view. This way you'll retain immersion. So with these tips, you can begin to design your levels with confidence by guiding the player to their next destination effortlessly and naturally. So use these techniques and apply them to your own level design. And again, if you enjoyed the tutorials and the courses that I've been putting out for more than a decade, then please consider supporting WoLD level design so I can continue doing this more and more by visiting and downloading any of the premium tutorials that I've released, or by making a donation. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.